is email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget.
Today I'm pleased to be speaking with Beverly Rider, an executive leader in industry and digital transformation, business incubation, the Internet of Things, smart cities, plus cloud and telecommunications. Beverly is a chief commercial officer and chief marketing officer at Tonomus, the world-leading cognitive technology enterprise formerly known as NEOM. She also serves as CEO of Portfolio T, Tonomus's venture studio. For more than 20 years, she's run international and domestic enterprise organizations within Fortune 350 companies, as well as more than 6 years as CEO of an Internet of Things and machine-to-machine startup. She's passionate about family, travel, and giving back, and we're lucky to have her join us today. Beverly, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's quite the introduction. Thank you to my team.
We have no time left now for the interview. No, just kidding.
Oh, my goodness.
So let's start with some background. You have such an impressive bio and extensive leadership experience in several industries. Let's start with NEOM. So what exactly do you do, and what's the vision and mission of NEOM and the work you're doing to build a new model for sustainable living?
Yeah, NEOM's actually, it's a concept that Saudi looked at for how do we create a new world in a new human environment that's sustainable living, takes away all reliance on carbon, and really looks at if we were going to have the perfect human experience in the future, what would that look like? So the art of the possible. It's interesting though, because I've never been in an environment before where you could look at the art of the possible and work backwards from it. And so having all these different entities. So there's about 55 nationalities when I started. I think there's now 80 nationalities. And so we all come with our own bias, our own thought processes to have that melting pot of ideas. It's like a think tank of let's bring it all together and see what we can come up with. So it's it's new and shiny objects, or what people used to call the bleeding edge. But at the same time, it's taking human concepts and extrapolating them out to how do we have that society 6.0.
Yeah, I've been reading about it on the website, and it's really fascinating with the whole line you have, and everything will be within a certain distance, walking distance, no cars, the automated ports. I mean, just it really is what's possible, and let's give it a shot.
It really is. We have dogs that walk around that are robots. We have little scanners that come through and scan every object to make sure that we know where everything is so nobody knocks into anything. We have autonomous buses that drive around. We have floating taxis, basically like helicopters that take people from place to place in packages. There's a hologram. You can make a hologram of yourself when you come into camp and see your hologram in one of the offices. So it really is the art of the possible, but using the art of the possible to actually create sustainable growth in all of the UN sustainable goals.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So tell us more about the path that led you to where you are today.
Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how I got here. It took about a year. I got a phone call. Somebody had seen me on the internet and something that I was speaking about. And I really like to blend human-centric concepts with technology and to figure out where that intersection is and how do you make humanity better rather than how do you take away from humanity by having technology. It's a pretty big passion of mine. And so being able to do that and then blend in sustainable practices. So for instance, if there's a hyperscale data center, it will be a green hyperscale data center. And how do you actually do that? If you're doing desalination, it's going to be a green hydrogen based, solar powered green hydrogen, right? So everything had the next wave of green and sustainability in order to make the technology successful and to make the human experience more successful.
Wow. I mean, as I was talking to you offline, we do a lot of work with the Olympics for one of their major sponsors, and Toyota's being another one of the major sponsors, and they're looking at hydrogen vehicles. And so it's pretty fascinating.
I actually
what's
worked
going
on
on
that
today.
with Hitachi. So yes,
I know all about it then.
Which might be why they came after me. Who knows?
It could be.
Yeah. So to answer your question more realistically, I've had a very zigzagged career. I tend to say yes. It is my favorite thing to do. If I have a couple of the items out of the 10 that people are looking for, I think I can learn the others. I don't know why I was born that way. I just was. I love a challenge and I get bored super easy. So I like big, complex problems. I believe that I've done things in the past to be proud of, but I was looking for my last position because I'm retiring at the end of this. I looked for my last position to be something where I could truly give back on more of a worldwide basis. And that's why I said yes. It took me a little while to convince my family to move to Saudi Arabia, which is the only reason it took a year, but I was in from the beginning.
Yeah, I read about your background, and you're a lawyer, or you went to law school. I'm not sure that you ever practiced, but
Both. Yeah.
so it's interesting when you have that kind of that's kind of how my background was. I took forever to get out of college, and my boss at the time said, "What are you going to tell people when they ask you why did it take you 7 years to get out of school?" I said, "I was here to get an education, not a degree. So if there was something I wanted on science fiction, I wanted to take it. There was something over here I wanted to take, I took it because I wanted to learn." So it sounds like kind of
that's
your
a
career.
great answer, actually. Yeah.
Sounds a bit like yours.
No, I do. I believe in learning as well. I don't know. I don't like to go a day without learning something new. I watch a lot of stuff now because we have different media avenues than I had earlier in my career. I used to read, I was a voracious reader, and anything I could get my hands on, I would go see people public speak. I was really into that. Any conference, I would be the one in the front row waiting for the keynote to come on and impart some word of wisdom. I just think through that, it's created in me also that wanting to give back all the things that I've learned. Like, I'm super big on financial education. I feel like we don't train that in the world. And I think that it's something that if we did more of, people would understand what's happening in their lives as well as elsewhere. So it's just like things like that. I get hooked on like a topic, and then I'll learn everything I can. And then I go to my next one. Recently, I got hooked on the tax code. So I read the tax code. So it just depends what tickles my fancy that day.
That's a rabbit hole I can't imagine going down. So
it was really interesting.
It's a pretty voluminous too, right? And it's not a short code.
It is not a short code, but I found lots of things that I didn't know before. But my husband had that same look that you just had when I said, "Hey, I'm reading the tax code." He was like, "Huh?"
I'll pick up almost anything, but the tax code, I may have to draw the line at that one. So when did you first discover your passion for technological innovation?
Oh, it was by accident. I was an attorney and I was practicing, and I was asked to do some different types of law. And so I got into doing a little bit of contract. I did a little bit of family law, like a little bit of everything. And there were a couple technology projects in telecom. And so at the same time, I had a baby right in the middle of it. I actually took the bar 8 months pregnant, started work with a newborn. It was crazy times. And what I discovered in that was, well, it's kind of funny now, but at the time I was working like any 1L or new person in law does. I was working like 90, 100 hours a week with a baby, which probably isn't the best for the baby or for the mom, but that's what I was doing because that's what was expected when I was younger. And I worked with a telecom company, and they were like, "Why don't you come on board here? Like, we have like regular hours, like you go home at the end of the day and you don't have to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week." And I was like, okay, well, why don't I try that? Because it'd be better for my family. Turns out it wasn't the job, it was me, because I still worked 80 hours a week. I still loved what I did. And what we found out is that I love sales. I loved commercials. I love sales. I love the art of the deal. I liked anything that was putting pieces together, or there was something broken and I got to fix it. And so within about 3 months, I converted over to running a sales division. And that's kind of how it started.
Wow. You started off by saying it happened by accident, but don't the best things in life happen that way?
Always. Best things that have ever happened to me. Yep.
I love serendipity. I'm with you. What has been the most surprising thing about your career or leadership journey so far?
I think that you're capable of more than you think you are. There's always more in the tank. The work always gets done somehow. People just always like, "Oh, there's only so many hours of the day," or, "Oh, you need to have balance." Well, I've learned in my life, I have no balance. I'm all in on whatever I'm doing in that very moment. And so I strove, I got to tell you guys, for like 30 years to find balance, only to find out that I will never have it. And that maybe some people don't. Maybe some people are just all in whatever moment they're in. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't have to be the best at everything at all times. So it's taken me a while to figure that out. But that's my biggest aha.
So your gas pedal's always mashed. Your direction can change, but you're always full on. I see.
I really am. Yeah. I did learn that I don't have to bake every cupcake. That's a new thing It took me to like seniors in high school for me to figure that out for my kids. But things like that, you just want to do everything you think you're supposed to do, whoever you are and in whatever role you view yourself at. And there's not enough of you to go around. So sometimes you're just 100% worker. Sometimes you're 100% mom. Sometimes you're 100% wife, 100% daughter. I just try to do the best in the moment with that person that I can.
It's a great attitude to have. It's rare, I think. But I'm with you on that one. I only know how to do one thing, and that's full on. I can't halfway do something. I'm either doing it or I'm not. I'm all in. So I think it's for me at least. What you're saying resonates with me because I feel the same way. So
yeah.
What are some of the major trends, innovations, and technology and business models that you forecast having the biggest impact on sustainability in the future?
Yeah, well, right now, the thing that's impacting everything is the financial markets. Across the board, the way that we're looking at money, the way that we're looking at cryptocurrency, the way that the recessions or potential recessions, depending on who you talk to, are impacting the inflation rates. All of those things, I think, right now are impacting all of innovation as well as all of the entrepreneurial talent we have out there. I also think the limited availability of entrepreneurial talent in certain regions is having a massive impact and something that we need to address by figuring out how in this new post-pandemic world, we can have people that work together, but might not necessarily be in the same place. And how do we create a teaming environment in that type of scenario? How do you create camaraderie and collaboration and trust and humility? Because I also find that that's lost in that new scenario. Everybody has to make their mark rather than working together and doing the common good. And then I also think just this idea of technology moving so fast that we can't keep up with it. And the lack of understanding between generations of how technology is being imparted. It reminds me, I just never can forget my grandparents hating my mom's rock and roll. And then, my mom, not necessarily understanding that new age music. And now me not understanding rap. It's kind of, every generation there's something like this. And I think technology is also that. I see my grandma who's 94 using the computer and getting on Facebook. Like, to me, that's just a massive wow moment, right? That means that the internet has permeated society. And I believe that other things that are happening right now, especially the metaverse and cryptocurrencies, are going to do that as well. This NFT phenomena that we're having, the people that understand it versus who don't, I just think it's the next generation and iteration that's going to surround the innovation community.
Let's poke on that a little bit. I'm a little concerned personally. I'm a people person, and I like being face to face. And virtual works, for some things. But one of the things I've been concerned about for somebody who's a new employee that came on board during the pandemic, never met their coworkers, and I wonder how do you learn the company culture when it's all remote? Because we know that, to me, company culture is what happens when nobody's looking. What happens when the guy gets off the phone and hangs it up? Does he say something negative about the customer or frustration? And so you don't see those things, obviously, when you're just on Zoom calls here and there. And I worry also about mentoring. Who's going to mentor these people? How does that work in a fully virtual world? So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I don't actually think we can ever be fully virtual. I know there's people that believe we will be. I don't. But I will tell you how I handled it, and also where I see strengths and weaknesses, even in myself. So when the pandemic started, I'm a driver. Obviously, it's pretty prevalent in the way I talk even. I wish it wasn't. I wish I was softer. But one of the things I didn't do normally with my team was I didn't start a conversation with, how was your weekend? How's your daughter? What did you do on your vacation? Occasionally, I would on those people that have been on the team for a long time, but I just didn't have that, I don't know, that ability at the beginning to talk about all that stuff. And what I noticed during the pandemic is people started to shut down, and the work product and the ability to get work done was decreasing as a result of feeling isolated. And so we started to have these Zoom calls where everybody would be on there, and it was like, the ticker tape, there's just one after another rows of people. And that wasn't working either, because then it was like, I just am going to shut off my video, and people started to shut off their video. And so I had to find ways to bring people together. And I found the only way to do that was to make it personal. It's really similar actually to how I do my public speaking, but I never even noticed it in myself before this, is that by sharing pieces of me or my fears or what I was having trouble with or what my family was struggling with, it allowed other people to talk. And by exposing themselves, they felt part of the team all of a sudden. And everybody would gather around those people that were having trouble, and they would call them and they would give them extra attention. And that brought the team together, and that allowed us to become more of a family than we'd been together for almost 4 years at that time. And it made us a family all of a sudden instead of just a team. And I think that was a way to overcome it, but it took a little bit of risk, right? It took a risk on my part and my whole entire leadership team to follow me into a way that they'd never worked with me before and just to trust me. And I basically said, hey, I don't know if this is going to work, but we got to do something because we have members that are struggling and they need us. And where else are they? Like, they live alone. We're their only contact to the outside world. So that was one thing that I saw that worked in some cases, not in all. And then the thing that I've seen since that is the lack of ability to communicate with, like cues from people, their facial expressions, their body language, all of those things is so very important in day to day. And somebody can fool you for an hour on the phone, like even interviewing. I hired a bunch of people during the pandemic. I made a lot of mistakes because I couldn't see the body language. I couldn't see them. I couldn't really feel them in person. I couldn't feel that energy they were putting off or not putting off. And I trusted the resume in a 1 hour or 2 hour conversation. And I think that happened as well in the team environment, where you started to just say what needed to be said or what you thought you were supposed to say, and the truth wasn't really getting told. Right. And so what we did, and what I've seen implemented in others that I copied, was I started demonstrating mistakes. And it's weird. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I would make a mistake and I would share it. Or I would have one of my team members, I'd be like, hey, this didn't work out. Can we talk about it as a case study? Let's talk about it. Let's make ourselves examples so people feel comfortable bringing the bad news and not just the good news, because it also seems to be one of the symptoms of having a virtual environment.
Yeah, I think that for me, at least, bad news is always bad. But as a manager of a project or manager of a team, I'm actually okay with bad news as long as you tell me when you learn about it. What I don't like is bad news you've known for months, and now you're just telling me because you kept hoping it would go away or you'd fix it. And I think you have to create an environment where they're going to come forward and tell you these things that are maybe not positive. Yeah. And I'm a big believer.
I don't know if you found this, but I found as well, people are not as nice in this environment as they were when they were face to face. It was much harder to be bitchy or nasty face to face than it is in this environment where you can shut off the video afterwards. And so I saw some of that bad behavior coming out as well. And in some cases you could like redirect, but I haven't figured out how you shut that piece of this I don't know what you call it, symptom off.
Yeah. I think the other thing with virtual as well is I'm a big believer in what you said. Body language is huge, and you can only see a certain amount on the call, and you can't see what they're doing. If they're tapping their foot because they're nervous or they're bored, they're looking down, and you don't know if they're taking notes or playing Candy Crush. I mean, there's so much you can't really see. And I mentioned earlier, but I think before the call we were just chatting, and I mentioned Sherry Turkle, who is I love her, and in her book I read there's studies that show that we make connections when we see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is right now it appears I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at the camera and I can't. You're way down here on my screen. So if I want to look at you, I have to look down. Now I've lost eye contact. So it
looks like you're not looking at me, right?
Exactly. So it's like I'm not lost interest, but I'm super interested because I want to see what you're saying, how you're saying it, what your facial expressions are. And these are all the challenges we're going to have, I think, for some time in a fully virtual world. And I'm with you. I don't think they will ever be fully virtual. There are some jobs that cannot be done virtually, and there's some teaming aspects that you have to have some close contact with people.
I was listening to Simon Sinek, who's one of the people that I listen to and that I really respect. And one of the things he was sharing about my son's generation is that they're always virtual. And I would have told you up until just a couple of years ago that they don't have a lot of social skills. They have social skills when they're at school or when they're, with their friends, but they spend the majority of their time online. They just do. It's an epidemic. What I didn't realize and what he made me rethink about, and then I kind of dove in with my own, is the interaction and the true relationships that have been created in that environment. And I don't mean, okay, I met some 40-year-old man and it's weird. I mean, in the way of, they made friends with people their age in their community at school, and they're talking nonstop. And they'll talk for like 8 hours and they'll talk about everything under the sun. And then sometimes they record themselves and they put these little snippets together. And it was so interesting to listen about, like, one was a World War II conversation. One was about, there's all these types of ammunition over time. And then there was another one about goblets. I don't even know what goblets had to do, but there was a whole dissertation about goblets in one of them. And so it was really interesting to me that they were thinking so deeply and esoterically about topics. And I would have never thought that's what a bunch of teenage boys were doing.
Nor would I, having one right now.
But maybe he is, and you don't know, because I had no clue.
He's always on his phone and computer. You're correct. And I feel just as guilty about that as the next person, that how much they're too much screen time. But
yeah,
it's I don't know. How do you stop it? So I do kick him out of the house occasionally. I say, you got to go play basketball. You got to do something. You got to get out, leave your phone. So
yeah, I know people are worried about it. And I, like I said, I'm worried about it too, but I also now see that there's way more under those covers. And I just hadn't taken the time to look under the covers because I was just like, oh yeah, that's just gaming. Well, it turns out it's not just gaming. It's also programming. It's also deep research. It's also, how do we beat the dragon? And you have to learn about goblets, I guess, to beat the dragon. So
I'll have to ask him about that one. He'll have to inform me. In a previous interview, you spoke on how our modern day systems are being transformed from complicated to complex. Can you share more about what you mean by this?
Yeah. So up until now, things have been complicated, right? It would mean there's 3 steps to go through to get to the end result. I think that as we add things like blockchain, as we add the cryptocurrency on top of the blockchain, as we add NFTs and things that are other types of assets, we add different versions of ourselves. It's not just me in the flesh. It's me on video. It's me as a hologram. It's me as a robot. For gosh sakes, I don't want ever one of those, but I know people do. There's avatars, right? And so there's all these things. I even have a bit emoji now. There's all these versions of self. And as there's more and more versions of self and more things, technologies underlying those, I think that it becomes incredibly complex, and so complex that the human mind can't think fast enough to keep up with that change or even to understand what's happening. And so my concern, and why I'm really focused on these human-centric elements, is how do we allow for the good in that while not allowing the bad in that to take over? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think computers are taking over the world. So nobody take me wrong, please. And I'll get emails about it, I know. But I really do worry that supercomputing and the ability to think so fast in that electronic forum takes the everyday man out of a lot of equations, maybe out of investing. No longer will people do, okay, I'm going to buy Coca-Cola stock because it's a blue chip and I know it and I like it, because now the computer will decide what has an up day and what has a down day. So I think across the world, that complexity getting so complex and getting it to the level of human interaction and the average person not understanding what's behind what they're doing, to me, that's a worry.
It's interesting. You would think maybe that's not the case, but I read an article, it's been several years ago now, that some of the investment firms, they'll pay extra money to make sure that their location is closest to the exchange, because their internet will take 1/10 of a second faster to get there, and their trades are executed quicker. Just stuff I never would have thought about. It's crazy.
Right. And if I have $1 trillion fund and I decide I'm going up today, I'm going to buy a lot and I'm going to push the price up. And if I'm not, I'm going to push it down, and my computer is going to allow me to do that faster. I'm going to put in my trade. It's going to go to my broker, who's going to put it into their computer and make it. And then it's going to come back. By then, that other computer already decided the outcome for me. And I actually have no say in that. And maybe I never did, but at least I thought I did, and I could understand the concept. And I use this one and I'm not saying anything about the trading markets. I'm using it as an example of what supercomputing may do, but supercomputing will do that in all different areas. We have oil prices, we have commodities and the amount available. We have transportation that's run by computers today, and very advanced computers. So every part of our life has some sort of that technology in the background, and it's becoming so complex. And for me, cryptocurrency is super interesting. Now, I love the idea of it. I love blockchain. I worry that when complexity happens, that complexity will be able to overcome the blockchain. And then what do we do? Is there a solution for that? Those types of things.
Your mind is deep. That's awesome. Regardless of industry, when you're in an executive or in a C-suite position, you're in the people business. As someone who, without her career, has managed 1,500 plus employees, what have you seen be the key to cultivating high-performing teams?
I think trust is the number one thing, that your team believes in you, believes in the mission, believes in the company. And sometimes they don't believe in all three at one time. Sometimes you have
Right.
to get them there, or sometimes you have to overcome together, but it has to be a team. There's no way to do it on your own. And you have to, I believe, at least, I manage every individual that works for me differently, because if you manage them the same, they're not the same person. So every person is motivated differently. Everybody has different objectives. Everybody has different career aspirations, and everybody needs a different type of mentoring. So it's really important to give the time, and it's not easy to give the time. So I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not. And sometimes I fail miserably in this area, but I really think it's that teaming and making every single person that's on the team feel like they should be there. They're an integral block, no matter where you are in the system, and that there's a complete, like I have a complete open door policy, and we don't have hierarchy. Anybody can come to me about anything. And if they ever feel like they can't, then I've screwed up.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm a big believer in teams as well. To me, it's, you win or succeed or lose as a team, right? No one single person. And you think about sports as an analogy. Well, what's a singular sport? Well, let's look at golf. Well, there's a caddy, right? So that's not really singular. Okay, tennis. There's a coach.
Yeah.
So really, if I'm driving a race car, Formula One, there's pit crew,
Your whole crew.
mechanic.
Yeah.
I mean, everything there's a team aspect to everything that we do. And when any one piece fails, then probably the whole thing will fail. So we win together. Big fan
And
of
also,
teams.
the leader should take all the blame and give away all the credit.
100%.
And I see a lot of leaders, beating their chest these days. And I really don't think that's, it's your job to take the hurdles. And if your team has issues or has problems or made mistakes, that's on you. But to take away their glory, it should go to the team members that actually did that act and created that success.
Yeah, that's one of my personal mantras as well, is anything bad I must have caused, anything good was the result of the team's effort. So I'm a big believer in that. Right. And I think your teams appreciate that as well.
Now, I also take my team everywhere I go, which I'm sure I warn my employers when I come, like, I'm coming, I'm staying, this is what I'm promising you. But no, I'm going to bring my team. And if I ever leave, other than retiring, I'm going to take my team with me. I'm pretty open about it, because I just believe that once you find that right inner workings, you can add and subtract people. But to have that core people that understand each other and trust each other and believe in each other, it makes you hit the ground faster and be more successful quicker.
This actually, I think, ties back into the earlier question as well. But have you seen this evolve at all during the pandemic? This idea behind trust and how it works. And I guess it kind of ties back into your early answer of,
well, yeah, people followed me to Saudi Arabia. I mean,
that's a big one. I got to tell you, that's a pretty big one. I got to give you that. You got something going for you for sure.
I don't know if that, to me, I asked and I was like, you can easily tell me no. I would totally understand. I know this is so foreign. You're going to think I'm crazy, but this is what I'm thinking about. And I told everybody probably 6 months before I made the announcement. So not only did nobody share, but everybody I asked came. So I feel very privileged and blessed. I have a phenomenal team.
That's awesome. I mean, what a pat on the back that is, to have that kind of trust and people want to follow you wherever you go. That's amazing.
Well, actually, I think the biggest pat on the back will be when one of them becomes my boss, right? If I actually have brought somebody along who is my succession candidate and she or he takes over from me, that would be the biggest blessing. That's what people did for me. That's what I hope I'm doing for them.
That actually leads perfectly into my next question. So how has the influence of fellow leaders and role models shaped your leadership style? And how do you view mentorship today?
Well, I've been spoiled, straight out spoiled. I don't know how I got so lucky. Every time I've been anywhere, I have been attached to a phenomenal leader. They're not always my leader, but somehow I found somebody to mentor me. I think in some cases I sought them out and sometimes they found me, but I've just been, blessed. Like, I can't even believe, from my undergraduate to my law school to my graduate school. And then every job I've ever had, I don't know. I found somebody who had something to teach me that I really needed to learn. And even today, I have found those individuals out in the market who, where I want to go next, which is retirement. But I don't mean somebody like with a boat sailing the Caribbean. I mean, like, maybe somebody who's on a board that I look to be on, blue chip board. And so that would be something I'd be looking for in the future. Or maybe it's venture investing, or all these different things that are of interest to me now. It's just really fun, I think, to find those leaders and to learn from them. And I've been, like I said, I've been super fortunate.
No, it sounds like, you mentioned a little while ago that you're kind of a lifelong learner. And something I think is admirable and a key factor to succeeding in leadership roles is that lifelong ability and desire to learn. What do you think some of the best resources that have helped you grow as a professional and as a leader?
Actually, mentoring others makes me learn the most, because I have to look inside myself. Like every place I've ever been has wanted to give me a professional coach. And I love my professional coaches. They're great. It's kind of like having a therapist to go to. I'm like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? Give me a topic. Let's talk. Right. But I actually think mentoring others makes you look inside yourself, makes you think about your history, and makes you think about what you're doing today, your methodologies of how you're doing it, and how do you get them from point A to point B where they want to go. Right. And for me, that makes me go to all my resources. I go to my mentors to ask questions about their questions. I go to the books. I go back and things that I've read. I find all these vignettes and all these podcasts, and I'll send them. I'll be like, oh, this is a great answer to that question. And it just makes me go looking. And I really do that, like, on a weekly basis, sometimes daily, depending on how much I'm talking to that individual and how much they're needing during that week.
Well, they say the best way to learn a topic is learn to teach it, right? So when you teach something, you really have to dig into it, understand it, because you can't talk to the next person about it if you don't deeply understand it.
Yeah. Sometimes I try to understand it too much, or I'll find like a nuance on the side and I'll be like, oh, now I need to learn about that too. It'd be funny. You and my husband would have an interesting conversation about my little tangents.
No, I think that would be awesome. I'd love to, because it's you definitely seem like you're 100% passionate about a topic. You really want to learn everything there is about it. You deep dive into it. So
yeah, well, most recently golf, because my husband's doing this golf startup. So he's a serial startup guy. And so they're working on this startup, and it's a golf app. And because of that, I have learned everything you need to know about building an app, which I never had built before. I'd had other people build them. Who does it, how you do it, what's best, what you're missing, what are the glitches inside of an app. I'd never needed to know this, I got to tell you. And now I know about that, and I've learned all about golf.
That's another topic I can never get into, is golf. Some of my best friends in college were on the Georgia Tech golf team, and I'd go play with them, and I would just hit the ball till they put it out, and then I'd pick up my golf ball wherever it was, probably nowhere near the green, get back in the cart and go to the next hole. I was just there to be with them, not really play golf. So
that's why you need a caddy right there.
Are there any leadership principles that speak to you personally and guide your day-to-day behaviors?
Yeah, I think honesty and integrity are at the top of my list. Being true to who I look at it every night when I look in the mirror. I think that it's so easy to lose your way in leadership, and it's so easy to take shortcuts or to, fray around the edges a little bit. And so I try really hard to stick to, hey, I know what the truth is, and I know what's right and wrong, and how do you stay in there, and how do you bring your team along in that, and not take those shortcuts, even if it's going to take more time and effort or longer.
Right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, I told you this already. Say yes. Whatever comes to you, just say yes. Like, once I bought a school for somebody out of China. I don't know anything about buying a school, I got to tell you. I had no idea what I was doing, but I looked at 37 schools. I found a school, and we bought a school. So you just say yes, and you learn through that process. It's actually super fun too. Keeps you energized.
Right. That takes courage to just say yes all the time too, by the way. I mean, I don't know that I could do that. That's because the opposite side of that coin is by saying yes, by saying no occasionally, you're saying yes to something else, which is another thing I've heard a lot. So
yeah, no, and that's true as well, right? I just believe that, you should look at everything as an opportunity. And so maybe even in your nose, you're looking at the opportunity of what your opportunity cost is on the other side and where it's going to, right? But and also think staying positive, like I wake up, well, here's two other things. I wake up every day in a good mood. And I learned when I was young that a lot of people didn't do that. People didn't start their day with a smile. They didn't smile at others, and that a little smile could go a long way. And so I decided that whenever I had trauma, bad stuff happen, 24 hours, I could be miserable. I could be bitchy. I could be my worst self for 24 hours. And afterwards, 25 hours, it's over. I do not allow myself to go further. And so no matter what, and I've had some big things happen, like we've all had catastrophic life events. I've had them. And you can be sad and you can be angry or whatever, but it has to be over and you keep it contained. And so for me, that's worked really well because then it doesn't bleed over into my team, into my work life, or into my family life.
That's a great one. That's a great adage. I know my dad told me when I was young, he says, son, you have a choice. Every day you wake up, you can either be happy or sad. It's your choice. You really want to go through life sad? And I took that to heart. It's just, let's treat every day as a new day and a new opportunity and be happy about it. So.
Well, yeah. And be who you want, like treat others how you want them to treat you. People have said that since I was little, but as I get older, it becomes more and more important. I think with the advent of so much social media, people are not as nice to each other and people are hard on themselves. And so I think if you don't emulate what you want others to be, then shame on you. And so I really believe that, treating others and appreciating the good in everybody and trying to actually talk about that and talk about our similarities, not our differences, whether it's in the workplace or elsewhere. I think that that's really important as well.
Yeah, I think we're almost at the end of our interview, and I think that's one of the key points for me is in today's environment, people don't really listen to each other, right? We just yell at each other back and forth and we have our opinion and we don't want to hear your opinion. And I'm good, you're bad. That's how we live in our foxholes and just hurl epithets back and forth. And that's really unfortunate because if you listen, you might see a different point of view. And if nothing else, you understand that person on a deeper level. So
exactly.
If we can figure that one out, we can solve world peace. That's awesome.
Okay, we'll work on that. So maybe that'll be my next thing.
That's your retirement plan right there. Work on world peace. Okay. I'm almost scared to answer I don't think you can answer this question, but what is the best book or article you've read recently and what was the key takeaway? You read so much, I'm not sure you'll have an answer.
No, but I'll tell you the best I've ever had. So there's two things. There's two books. One's The Giver by Lois Lowry, and it's about deciding whether you're going to keep all the knowledge or share it. But if you share it, you end the way things are today. I'm all for that. And I just thought it's a very good dichotomy of kind of where the world is today. And the second one, it's a book that some people love and some people hate. It's called The Fountainhead, and it's by Ayn Rand. And I love it because it talks about being the best that you can be and learning and growing and doing the best, even if the rest of the world doesn't understand it yet. And I think if we all had that same mindset, that the world would be a great place.
So I haven't read The Fountainhead. I did read Atlas Shrugged. It took me 3 different times picking it up to read it, but I finally got through it.
That's a thick book. Yeah.
It is a thick book. So have you read that one?
I have, yeah.
How does it compare to The Fountainhead? Because wasn't The Fountainhead like a precursor to Atlas Shrugged, if I remember correctly?
They're very different from one another, and The Fountainhead is 10 times better.
All right. Well, that's on my to-do list for my vacation trip coming up. So
yeah, no, it's an amazing book. Howard Rourke, he's my ultimate hero.
I'm going to read that one next week.
Okay.
So what haven't I asked that I should have?
I think you've asked everything. I think you did a great interview, actually.
Well, it's easy. One of my tests, if it's gone well, is I look down and realize we've gone over time, and I feel like we're just 20 minutes in and it's an hour. And so, you're an incredible interview. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more about you specifically or about Noam, how can they do that?
Oh, so either beverly.rider@neom.com or www.neom.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the conversation, Beverly.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation. To find out more about Clint, go to clintonmpaget.com and pick up Clint's book, How Teams Triumph, Managing by Commitment, at Amazon. The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget is a production of Forbes Books.